Welcome to Fox Valley Today. I'm your host, Anne Vickery. Thank you for joining us on this Monday, kind of a gloomy Monday. Joining me today from the Kendall County Health Department, Environmental Services Director, Anne Rybski. Aaron's been a guest on our program a number of times, always here to give us a little bit of an update on environmental issues, especially environmental health, right?
Absolutely, all sorts of different things.
Well, welcome, Aaron. Glad
Thanks.
you could make it over today. You know, one of the things that continues to be on the rise, and maybe I'm starting backwards, but I want to kind of lead into this because I like to call it Scary Monday, because we always have some of these issues to talk about that if you aren't aware of, you ought to be, and if you aren't, you ought to be. Sometimes being scared into things a little bit sometimes doesn't really hurt, but there's been a rise in lung cancer. It's a well-known fact that lung cancer is incredibly on the rise, rising faster than most all other cancers, and is one of the more deadly cancers out there. It's a kind of a low rate survival thing, because it's so hard to spot at the very, very beginning. But one of the things that they are attributing to a higher lung cancer death rate is radon.
This is true. You know, and I want to just take a moment and say, yeah, you want to scare the information, but we really want to make sure that people just understand that there's risks out there, and radon is one of those things that can be attributed to lung cancer, or lung cancer can be attributed to radon. The EPA actually estimates, they've done several studies going back 15 years or so, that around 21,000 deaths annually can be attributed to radon. It's very difficult to pinpoint a radon-induced lung cancer situation, because when we're talking about radon, we're talking about chronic exposure to this invisible, tasteless, odorless gas that can seep into your home. It's that chronic exposure. It's time after time living in a house for years and years and years that will increase your risk. So when you're looking at it, you're not thinking let's contrast it with carbon monoxide or a house fire or something like that. If one of those situations peaks, if you have a house fire, if you have carbon monoxide leaking in your home, you have to take care of it immediately. You know, if you don't, people know what caused the problem. You're not there anymore.
Right.
It's an acute problem. It happens very fast. Radon, on the other hand, is a long-term exposure, and that is what increases the risk of getting lung cancer. And like I said, the EPA puts it at about 21,000 deaths across the nation annually, thereabouts, which makes it more dangerous than more dangerous than house fires or house falls or something like that. It really is dangerous.
That would equate to, if you just average it out, to about 500 deaths per year per state.
Sure.
On that, and based on the fact that we've got 102 counties, it would give you five. What would that be? Would that be two deaths?
Now we're playing.
No. Yeah, I'm doing about five deaths per county.
Sure.
Five deaths per county attributed. I mean, when you break it down like that, and I know some counties are larger than others, and some states are much larger than others. But if you just kind of average it out like that, that would be 5 deaths in Kendall County.
Well, and
you
think about the different factors that can, of course, contribute to lung cancer, and there's smoking as well. And we know that radon is synergistic with smoking. So if you're smoking cigarettes and you're in a high radon concentrated environment, high radon environment, it actually increases even further your risk of getting lung cancer. So there's all these different things that you may be doing to yourself. You may not realize. Radon, of course, smoking is bad for you, but it can increase your problems. But the thing we want to say with all of this is that yes, radon is a problem, but it is preventable, and that's the key. Again, radon is that colorless, odorless gas. It seeps out of the ground. It occurs from naturally occurring decay of uranium in the soil deep down. Not a problem outside. It dissipates in the atmosphere, is diluted, it blows away, no problem. But when it concentrates in the house, that's when you have this issue.
Yeah, because it just sits there.
Right, it gets into the home and it sits, and that's what causes that issue. It concentrates in your home.
There were a couple of things that we had talked about off camera, and we talked about 2 different instances, I should say, of how radon was discovered to be an issue with people. One was in Pennsylvania, one was in Iowa. Why don't you tell our listeners about that?
Well, we've known that there was, I shouldn't say we, but people have known that there was a problem with being either underground or being in certain areas. You get the lung cancer or lung problems over time, and they couldn't figure out why. Sometimes, of course, we learned later lung cancer was the culprit. But getting to Iowa, one of the things that they started noticing is in the farming communities, or at least one particular community, there were an alarming number of lung cancer cases that showed up in the farm wives who had been on the land, in the home, working, being a farmer, a farmer's wife, running a farm family for years and years and years and years and years. They were getting lung cancer. They never smoked. Whereas some of the other people in the house, let's say the men who were out in the field, we're talking 50, 60 years ago, they were out in the field all day, they weren't getting that same kind of lung cancer. And they've ultimately pinned it on, there's a high radon concentration in those houses. They actually had done electron microscope views of their glasses, and you can see the etchings, particles on their eyeglasses or on the glasses on the family photos that were on the wall for 50 years. You'd see etchings from the radiation, the particles that were scraping up against it for years and years and years. People were inhaling that, getting those radon decay particles in their lungs, and that's what was causing that increased risk for lung cancer. The other instance, and what really brought radon to the forefront, was there was a gentleman who was a construction engineer out in Pennsylvania, and him and his family, they had a home out there, and he was working on a project which was the Limerick nuclear power plant, and this was in the town of Limerick. And as it was a power plant under construction, he was going to work, doing what he needed to do, going home at the end of the day. Well, as systems started coming online for that power plant, and they activated their systems that would check, you as you left for
in and out.
Exactly, in and out, checking for radiation and what you were picking up. All of a sudden, they noticed when he walked in the door
that thing was going beep.
Yeah, it was setting it off. They couldn't. What on earth is going on? Is it working? Sure, and figuring this out. What is he doing in his house? What is going on in his house? So eventually they traced it back to his home. And they checked the home. They found out he had an incredibly high radon concentration in that home, which was enough to set off the meters in the nuclear power plant as being dangerous.
My gosh.
Exactly. And they moved the family out. They studied the home, and that's what really pushed it to the forefront. And the EPA set an action limit or an action level of what was known as, it's measured in picocuries. It's 4 picocuries per liter, and that's the action level that we still use today.
Okay.
And that's kind of the benchmark. Once you hit 4 picocuries in your home, the recommendation, and keyword is recommendation, you look at it, you do something with it, you try and mitigate that hazard. Again, this is something that is preventable.
Now, we now have a system in place that is had been decided by state and county laws and ordinances that new homes have to be built with a kind of a radon release system inside, right?
Well, it's been a recognized problem for many, many years. Obviously, the Stanley Watrous instance occurred in the early 80s. Kendall County, I know, somewhere after that, shortly after that, enacted a law saying that you had to have some sort of mitigation system installed in new residential homes. In 2015, the state of Illinois passed the Radon-Resistant Construction Act, which said that all new homes in the state, residential homes, are radon resistant. That is, they're sealed up pretty tight in the basement or the ground interface, and they have a passive system that is built into the home.
And basically what they do is they stick a piece of PVC inside the concrete when they're pouring it, right? Comes up and up between some studdings on the wall, comes right up through the upstairs or the attic or whatever, comes out the roof line, right?
Yep.
Be no different than a vent for a septic system. Right?
It's very very technical. Yep,
Yeah.
It really is. It's just getting the air out from underneath that foundation.
Right.
A passive system is just that. It's just a pipe that is passively operated. You have the air that flows naturally out.
And it's a natural updraft that comes through it, yeah.
Absolutely. So it's really the best thing to do if you're going to have a passive system is to do it when the home is being constructed.
Right.
When the wallboard isn't up yet, you don't have the drywall up. You can run a pipe through the wall, you never see it, and then there's a pipe that pops out the top of the house. That is the first step, is a passive system. That's the hardest part. If you still find that there's radon in the home, and a passive system may not take care of your problem, depending on your situation, you can turn that into an active system relatively easily, and you get a professional mitigator that has the fan that can open up that pipe, put the fan in, make sure the electricals run for it, and it actually will actively suck that air out.
Right.
And you have the little, I don't remember what they're called, but it's the liquid in the tube to see that it's running down in the basement. You can see that pressure difference, and that usually takes care of your problem.
Now, the next question would be, if you don't have a passive system in your house, you have an older home, like we do, what would a person do? How would they find out if they have radon?
Well, what we encourage people to do as a first step is always to test. Why? Because testing is a very easy, inexpensive thing to do. You can get test kits, radon test kits, in several places. You could get them at hardware stores, or you can even pick them up at the Kendall County Health Department. They're very affordable. We're talking like $6. And so we recommend that you test your home. Now, what does that do? It'll tell you where your radon count is for that short-term test. It is a short-term test. Is it the most accurate test in the world? No, but it gives you a very affordable, very quick snapshot of what you've got in your home at that time. Goodness, we've had people come in and buy 2, 3 of them because they want to test different levels of the floor, especially when they're $6. It's not any big drain.
It's not a life-changing.
No, if it was $1,000, we wouldn't be pushing it quite as hard.
Right.
But honestly, it's only $6. So when we've had people run a test. And then we'll try, let's say they got a slightly high count. Let's say they got a 5 picocuries, 1 over the EPA action limit. So they decide they'll try and seal up the basement a little tighter, seal down the sump pit lids, seal the cracks in the walls, and then go do another test and see if that's made a difference. So there's a lot of, that's the first step. If you find you have a high test, we recommend that you look into mitigating your problem. You could do several things. Of course, if you have kind of glaring problem areas, let's say in an older home you don't have the sump pit sealed down, you can seal that down because radon will come up through the sump pit. You could seal the cracks in the walls like I had mentioned. That's a quick fix that might solve your problem. Other than that, we would strongly recommend that you talk to a licensed radon mitigation specialist, and they can look at it. That's their job. Their job is to solve that problem.
Right.
And it's a difficult job, especially when you look at, let's say, a 150-year-old home. That could be very drafty.
Yeah, you're talking about me there.
Sure. Or you've got schools or apartment buildings. It can get very challenging. How do you make that work? That's not our specialty. Those are the professionals.
Right. And sometimes having a draftier home is maybe a positive thing.
Sure.
Because you are moving that air through there all the time.
It's that funny thing, because yes, a draftier home will get that radon out if you have a problem, or if the radon comes in your home, but you'll pay more in heating bills.
Right. So I guess it's 6 to 1, but I know that there's weatherization things that people always try to do to seal up their home, but at the same time, you can almost build a house too tight too.
Of course.
There's all those other things. Listen, we got to take a little bit of a break. We're going to be right back with Anne Rybski from the Kendall County Health Department, and we'll be right back. Stick with us.
So, I just moved in with this family, and it's embarrassing. The little one, he likes to go outside and crawl around in the giant litter box. I don't know what he's doing. I mean, I was born and I knew how to use the litter box. Look at that. That's disgusting. Oh, poop already. You're making me nervous. Oh, okay, I can't look at this anymore. I really hope he grows out of this, for his sake.
we'd do anything for kids. Yet 1 in 6 children in the U.S. struggle with hunger. Help end childhood hunger near you. Learn how at feedingamerica.org.
Your son wants to get a cat, but you're allergic. Do you A, prepare yourself, B, make the best of it,
C squared equals
25.
Good job!
or C, find a loophole? When it comes to parenting, there are no perfect answers, but that's okay, because you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Teens in foster care will love you just the same.
Today I'm here with Anne Rybski from the Kendall County Health Department. We're discussing on our Scary Monday radon. And, you know, we were talking about all the different things that, you know, build up in houses and some of the issues that are related to having high radon counts. But what are we doing locally to circumvent some of these problems that might be there?
Well, we've been really working on this for at least the last 10 years. We've known it was a problem. We've been our program has actually grown in terms of what we're able to do to get the information out for people. We're still operating with the same amount of funding. We're just doing a lot more with that to get the information out. Most people don't think about radon. Most people are of course, they're worried about getting the batteries in their smoke detectors and getting their taxes done and getting the kids to soccer practice. But we want to make sure that people understand that this is something that is in the home that is common up here. We actually have seen over years that the EPA has a really good website where all the professional testers' data has gone in, and you can see it's currently down, so I'm sorry, but it's a great site that actually you could zoom in by zip code, and you can see the aggregate. What are the tests that have come from that area, and what is the average reading? We've had thousands of tests in this county that have been done, and almost, I would say, according to that data, 47% of those tests are over the EPA action limit.
Really? And what is over the limit?
Sure.
What is that number?
The EPA set that limit at 4 picocuries per liter many years ago. And just because you have a home with more than 4 picocuries per liter doesn't mean you're going to get lung cancer, but that means that you are exposed to a level of radiation that we recognize is not a healthy thing. When you smoke cigarettes, besides the tar, you pick up a certain amount of radiation as well from the cigarettes. The equivalent of 4 picocuries per liter is the equivalent of smoking half a pack of cigarettes per day in terms of the radiation you take into your body too. Yes.
So you quit smoking and you're still at risk.
You're still at risk. That's the thing. And again, you know, yes, it's Scary Monday. We could talk about this as a scary thing, and it is kind of, but we just want to make sure that people understand that this is an issue here, but it's something that is preventable. It is something that you can take care of, but we recommend that you test, you look at it. Again, it's wonderful to know it's good to see that people have tested. It's good to see what our count is. The northern third of Illinois has a high level of radon in homes on average.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that, you know, every test, like I said, in Kendall County it was 47%, so it's kind of like flipping a coin.
That's, yeah, so practically every other home is going to be over that limit. Okay, now what is the state doing?
Well, the state actually runs, the Illinois Emergency Management Agency gets a grant from the federal EPA, and they're able to dole out this money to sub-grantees to allow for funding for this kind of education. For people have been very, very, very creative, and we're all working very hard to get the word out, whether it's on television programs, whether it's through the newspaper. I know in Kendall County we've run movie trailers. We've had Facebook posts. We're running Facebook posts right now. We're on TV. We've had a newspaper article. We're doing public presentations. We want to get that word out because it's that education to empower people to make the choices that are best for their health.
Yeah. Well, a lot of that is just, you know, a lot is common sense. And, you know, you think about what the health department does, environmental health. I mean, you've got, I mean, talk about the things that we just need to live. I mean, you could live without a restaurant,
Sure.
but you need clean water.
Mm-hmm.
You need a septic systems that function and that keep the septic away from the wells and out of the publics.
Not contaminated.
We have the radon. What do you think is the biggest number one environmental health concern that we have in this county?
Oh my goodness, that's a great question. When we're talking about the programs we run, you had mentioned not everyone needs to eat in a restaurant, but if you buy your food at all in the
Right,
county, that
right.
is, really when you're thinking about it, the biggest ones as I see in my mind is if you eat in the county, unless you're growing your own food and you're completely self-sustaining on your property.
And you know how to handle that perfectly.
True. Your environmental health touches your life in one way, right there. If you're breathing in the home, and if you have radon, which again is a flip of a coin, we're trying to make sure you understand that. If you're drinking water out of a well, or taking care of your sewage with a private sewage disposal system, and we have thousands and thousands of homes that are served by these, even brand new homes. A lot of people don't realize that not all homes are on a sewage system.
Well, you take some of those subdivisions that are developed out in the county, they are not on public well and septic.
Absolutely. So we work very hard to make sure people understand that. We want to make sure people understand that radon is a problem here. And another point with radon that I want to make sure we mention is that even if you don't deal with it right now or don't want to look at it right now, it has become such it's been brought so far to the forefront. People know that it's a problem. When you sell your home, it's on realtor checklists now. They want you to check for radon, and buyers are looking for that as well. So we strongly recommend you look at it now, you're living with it. If you don't, you're going to look at it when you sell your home.
Yeah, so you might as well fix it now.
Right.
Because sooner or later, it's going to pay me now or pay me later, doesn't matter.
Exactly. So we strongly recommend people look at it. And again, if you have a high radon test count, that is your issue. You can decide how you want to deal with it. There's not, you're not going to have someone knocking on your door saying, you have a high count, you have to fix your house. We're not going to do that. The health department doesn't do that. The government doesn't do that. But it's up to people to make those choices, and we can assist and point them in the right direction.
I do have to say that there has to be, and I know people get lung cancer for all kinds of different reasons. I suppose smoking would be the number one
It is.
reason, and I don't know, of course radon would be in there. But to me, there has been a higher number of people that I've known who have got lung cancer and died from lung cancer who probably never smoked a cigarette in their life.
They say that radon is the leading cause of lung cancer in non-smokers. If you're a smoker, of course, you're putting yourself at that higher risk. But beyond that, radon is the second highest risk of causing lung cancer.
Right.
It's that chronic exposure year after year.
Well, I mean, you guys keep track of all that data, so that you're kind of up on it. When people die of lung cancer, as people would figure that it was smoking related, do you keep track of those deaths?
We do not in environmental. I can't speak for the other divisions
Or
of the
as in
department.
the public health department,
I really don't know. We're looking a lot more at the environmental conditions, and we know that the testing is showing high concentrations of radon in the county.
Now, one of the other things we touched on, I think we've kind of covered the radon issue pretty good. But we talk about public health, and we talk about environmental health. Public health, environmental health, and restaurants all kind of come together on that. We have, at this point, not seen a major outbreak of salmonella or listeria here in our county, have we?
We've had, those are difficult to track too, but we have not had a major outbreak, and I'll say yet. We've had small outbreaks that have been attributed to, I believe it was salmonella, but it's nothing major yet. All you have to do, though, is go one county over, and you can see that there are major outbreaks in DuPage County, and major outbreaks that do happen, which really point towards the importance of having people checking up on that and having people coordinating a response to that, because when something like that happens, it can shut down an entire, depending on the size, it could shut down an environmental health department or division, and you're just working on that outbreak, getting the information out, mitigating that problem, making sure people get tested, making sure you understand the full scope of the problem. It's big.
Well, I mean, any of those foodborne illnesses are always going to be much harder on the little ones and on the older ones who may have a compromised immune system, much like the influenza outbreak this year.
Sure,
It's-
or organ transplant,
Right.
people who are on medications. That's the thing, and that's what we push with our restaurants. Yet, sometimes, you're looking at the requirements, you're looking at what you need to do, and you may think it's a little extreme, but you have to consider if your 90-year-old grandmother or if your 2-year-old, 1-year-old was eating that food, they could get very sick. They could be in the hospital. And we find now, there are studies that are showing that if you end up with a bad foodborne illness, this could have long-term effects. It can increase the risk for other problems. So it's something that it's not going to just send you to the bathroom for a day. This is something that could be much longer term.
Right.
You got to take care of yourself.
Because
protect
it
yourself.
does really upset the whole balance of what's in your gut, the good stuff that's in there, that's breaking down the bacteria and stuff that's coming in. We have been fortunate to not have a major outbreak.
Sure.
A lot of times you'll hear about it from after people have had they've had a big catering deal where they've had a lot of food brought in.
Sure.
Sometimes that happens. Sometimes you'll hear about it at the church picnic. 22 people ate the wrong potato salad. And so what kind of process do you guys follow when you want to make sure that restaurants are, I'm sure you have a large checklist, but maybe you could just run over some of the basics.
Sure. Well, what we do is we have an inspection program. We work to ensure that food providers are making sure that they're following good practices, protecting the food. We get out our thermometers, the whole 9 yards.
Right.
But we're in food facilities, we're in nursing homes, schools. We check caterers, mobile vendors. We're out at the fairs. So we have a robust program.
I just kind of want to break in for me. You see a lot more food trucks now. This is really, really, really popular. How do you manage all that?
Well, we see a food truck as basically a restaurant on wheels.
Right.
And we treat it as a restaurant on wheels. Obviously it's a little different, but it's closer to a restaurant than, let's say, the Boy Scouts who sell the hot dogs at the park with with their tent. It's a different kind of situation. But I think that touches on a key point. This whole thing the food program is evolving. It's changing with different kinds of food, different cuisines that we see from different cultures coming in. With the food trucks, with shared kitchens, all sorts of different things that are happening. People want to bake out of their home and sell that kind of food.
Right, because they did the cupcake law.
Sure.
And and I can understand that. That you don't see a lot of danger in a cake. You could see a little danger in the frosting.
Sure, it depends on what it is. It's potentially hazardous or not.
Right, because you're using dairy products in it.
Absolutely. So there's a lot that we have to think about in that. But that's environmental health. Whether we're thinking about the air, the water, the food, it's all of those things.
That's right. Well, you guys have a lot to contend with over there. I think you do a great job.
Thank you.
We've got a pretty healthy community.
We're doing
Kendall
pretty
County
good.
is a very healthy county. You do a good job of seeing after our elderly, the vaccination programs for the youth, and you perform all kinds of services over there that are so important. And I know Terry Olson was here a couple of weeks ago. We had a mall on last week, and we talked about a variety of things that I think were all very interesting and important. And I thank you very much for coming over today, Aaron, and talking to us about radon. And go over there at the health department and get your radon testing kit and check your house. Probably a good idea. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time.